Welcome back. Hope everyone had some good conversations at the expo while indulging in lunch. Remember that we would love your feedback at the end of the session. Scan the QR code shown at the end of the session and stand to win a limited edition swag from us. With this, please help me welcome Peter Shi, Commercial Architect, AWS, on stage.
Hi everyone, I hope you all had a great lunch and enjoyable summit so far. Now, before I get started, quick show of hands, who uses AWS here? Good number of people. And have you used AWS for less than 3 months? Less than 3 months? Others, a few more experienced users? Awesome. And one more question. What sort of role do you have at your company, if you are in a company? Is it more engineering focused? Show of hands for engineering focused? Or, thank you, or commercially focused? So paying the bills, finance, budget, commercially? Good to see a bit of a mix. So I think you're at the right place. Many users and many customers who use AWS, of course, want to spend a bit less. And that's what today's talk will be about. My name is Peter Shi, Commercial Architect, and essentially I help customers with cost management and optimizing AWS spend. So it's a bit of a funny and peculiar role because not many vendors have people in my role helping customers reduce spend, but AWS is super interested to be the most customer-obsessed company in the world, and so we have such roles to help customers. Now, the first part of the talk, very simple, 3 parts of the talk. The first part is how AWS helps you with spend and optimization, and how AWS helps you realize business value. The second part will be about what you can do to reduce spend on AWS and manage it well as well. And finally, it's about getting help when you need it as well. So I'll share with you some avenues for support if you need help. And so, how do we help you? The first thing to note is one way that AWS helps customers is it innovates quickly on behalf of customers. The vast majority of our roadmap, the things we bake into the platform and the new services we produce, are based off customer asks. Now, if every single customer had to build this volume of service and new technology for themselves, the amount of overlapping resource will be incredible and huge. And so when you centralize that innovation into a cloud company such as AWS, there you get a lot of efficiency and savings that way. In the past, you also had to do a lot of peering into the future. So one thing that AWS does is it lets you eliminate the waste that comes from trying to peer into the future and plan in advance and bake in advance your IT capacity. And you can see in this image that the gray line at the top is what many customers used to have to do themselves when they had their own infrastructure and had to procure it over a long period of time and make sure you don't run out of capacity. And because the amount of effort and work that goes into launching a new data center is quite a lot of work and takes a lot of time and approvals, you always had to provision lots of extra capacity. Now in the world of cloud, you no longer have to do this. You can fit your costs much closer to what you actually need. And all of that space between the gray line and the blue lines is now just eliminated. AWS also shares with customers how to lower, AWS also lowers spend over time. And since inception in 2006, we've lowered prices around 67 times. It's pretty rare that you spot vendors do this. It's usually the opposite. Year on year, some increases, perhaps to license fees. But we share our savings with customers as we grow. We also share how to save cost. If you search online, AWS cost optimization, or look on YouTube, there are lots of videos about how to save spend programmatically across your company and specifically for individual services. And on AWS, you simply pay for fewer things. Traditionally, you pay for the application and everything that supports the application. On AWS, instead, a lot of those costs are wrapped up into what is paid in the hourly fee. So instead of having all of the networking, power, and facilities as separate costs, that's baked into the EC2 compute costs and other services that go with. And with some basic optimization, we see many customers able to save 20 to 40% relative to what they were paying before. And it also gives you access to serverless technology, which just simply isn't a thing in traditional infrastructure. In serverless technology, for example, Lambda, where you only pay for the milliseconds of code that you run, we've seen customers save an extraordinary amount, up to 90%. And so, finally, the economic benefits of cloud go well beyond cost savings as well. They stretch into areas of staff productivity, and we've seen customers save a lot of people time in doing server migration. On top of that, we have managed services like RDS that manages the patching and backups for you. We see customers improving their operational resilience as well. As individual companies, it's hard to keep on your team fleets of engineers to be on call 24/7 to manage any incidents, but as AWS, we are able to support that sort of team. And finally, business agility. So you can, through AWS, can expand not only to really any part of the world you like, but from the perspective of the time it takes to launch applications, it's much quicker because of things like infrastructure as code that AWS provides, and you can save your work configuring infrastructure as code, as templates, so you can repeat that work easily into the future, making things quicker and reducing the amount of mistakes as well. So, now over to you guys, what you can do to spend less on AWS. And so, looking across many customers, we see the most impactful ways to save on AWS being these 5. And I'll go into these 5 very shortly. But to just state them, they're right-sizing, increasing elasticity, so amount of on-off and just scaling that you do, using spot instances, using reserved instances, and overall designing for cost efficiency. So the first one, right-sizing, is all about selecting the right resource for what you need. In this example, let's pretend we've provisioned a M4 4x large computing box, or EC2 instance. We're running it. It seems to be working well. And then what you can do is you can use a service provided by AWS called CloudWatch. And by default, if you configure your instance to send data to CloudWatch, it will show you your CPU usage and a few other metrics as well. And so in this example, it's a little bit small, but in the compute metric there, it's only using 15% of the resources compute. And when you see it's only using 15%, what you can do is stop the instance, change its size, and start the instance again. And so in this case, we're moving from $1.72 per hour down to 21 cents 50 per hour. Now, this scalability and this ability to change the size of what you're using allows you to fit much closer to what you actually need and fit your costs to your actual workload. After you make this change, many customers review the performance of their workload to see that their application is still working well. And in this scenario, you've just saved 87%. There are a number of tools to help you with this right-sizing as well. Just to name a few, we've got things like CloudWatch, where you can do it manually, like I've just described. We've got resources such as Trusted Advisor, which gives you recommendations of which resources look like they're not being used much. There are a number of third-party tools as well that help you with this space. And finally, there's an open source tool, EC2 right-sizing, that gives you a report and tells you which resources to change from and to as a recommendation. Elasticity is the second one, and it can reduce non-production spend by a lot, 70% or even more. Beyond turning off the resources yourself through resource scheduling on and off, you can also use this AWS service called AWS Autoscaling. In this example, we have demand curve that looks like that, and one resource, M5 2x large, that covers all of the demand. Instead of running that M5 2x large over the course of the 24 hours, what you can do instead is use autoscaling and fit smaller resources onto the demand. In this case, by using 51 M5 large instances, the little boxes, over time to fit your demand, you're able to save 47% in this case. So try to use autoscaling wherever you can. Autoscaling is also good for keeping your instances running and up and performant, because autoscaling, if it notices your instance is down, it will try to spin up another instance to recover. There are a few tools, again, to make your life easier. There's the autoscaling guide. There's the AWS Instance Scheduler, which helps you turn on and off EC2 and RDS. And finally, there are a number of paid third-party tools that help in this space too. So if we flick over now, I'll demonstrate Instance Scheduler and what it can do for you. So if you search online for AWS Instance Scheduler, it will bring you to this page on AWS Answers. And effectively, it does that to your instance spend. So you get about 70% savings because it just so happens that the number of work hours in a week, assuming 10-hour working days, I wish we all had 10 days per day, divided by the number of hours in a week is roughly 70% of the time. Other way around, 30% of the time. So when you launch this CloudFormation template, which is infrastructure as code, and it successfully completes, you'll get in the CloudFormation console something like this. I called it AWS Instance Scheduler. It says create complete, so it's done. And what it creates is a few resources, including a DynamoDB table. And DynamoDB is our NoSQL database service. And inside, it's got a few pre-populated things. For this example, I'm using two of these. One is a period item called office hours. And here it just says, hey, weekdays is Monday to Friday, and begins at 9 a.m., ends at 5 p.m. And I've said, hey, let's apply it to Australian time zone. Here we go, office hours, and the time zone is Australia, Sydney. And so when I apply this name of the tag to my EC2, so in here is my EC2 console for computing, and I've got two resources running. They're both the same size, but they've got a slightly different tag and name. So this resource, under its tags, has AU office hours under schedule, and this resource, under tags, has not applicable under schedule. And so you might have good reasons not to schedule your resource. For example, SAP workloads might need to stay on all the time. But for resources that can be scheduled, you try to schedule. Now, the impact of this is pretty big. These darker blue purple lines are for the instance that was not scheduled. And these lighter blue greenish lines are for the instances that are scheduled. And this chart is showing you daily spend of the resource. Now, if I flick that daily spend over to monthly, you can see the dramatic difference. Just because I spent maybe 3-4 minutes applying schedule, I've automatically saved the difference between $90 and $20. So I've saved about $70 per month. Quite impactful, especially so for bigger resources. All right, let's flick back to the slides. So aside from right-sizing, so shrinking your resources to what you need, and scheduling on and off, and auto-scaling as well, there's EC2 Spot. And EC2 Spot is all about using the spare capacity within AWS data centers. That spare capacity we want customers to use up so that we balance out the total use within the data center, so not everyone turns on their resources all at the same time. And in exchange, we give a big discount, typically 75 to 90% off on-demand spend. And that's 75 is roughly average for APAC region. One customer managed to spin up 1.1 million concurrent CPUs using AWS Spot. So there's a lot of spare capacity out there for you to use at a big discount. And it's a pricing and architectural best practice and decision. So up front, when you're designing your application, if you learn about Spot and you design for Spot, then you can take advantage of the discounts. Once again, there are a number of tools that help you out. We have Spot Fleet and EC2 Fleet that are services that help you manage between on-demand and Spot. So if it notices that there is no Spot available, it will use on-demand instead. AWS Spot Block, so that allows you to block up to 6 hours of Spot because it is spare capacity in the data center. If it runs out of spare capacity and other customers are using on-demand, the Spot resource will be taken away with 2 minutes notice. But with things like Spot Fleet and EC2 Fleet, you can architect in a way that that 2-minute warning doesn't really matter to you, and your application will stay up anyway. You've got Spot Instance Advisor, which gives you an idea of what Spot pools are most available and roughly what discount you'll get. There's also a feature that was recently released called Spot Start, Stop, and Hibernate. So Hibernate is like when you turn off the screen of your laptop and fold it down, you'll go to sleep, and when you're ready again to use Spot, you can turn it back on. And Start Stop allows you to stop your instance, but keep the storage that was associated with that instance if it's on EBS, for example. So you can do some work, save it onto storage, and when Spot goes away, it stops. And when Spot comes back and there's spare capacity again, you can continue your work. And there are third-party paid tools that help as well. One example is SpotInst, and one benefit of third-party paid tools it reports the savings you're realizing from using Spot. So quite a few engineering teams, there may be a requirement to report savings realized from doing things, and so SpotInst can help with that. The fourth one, that is actually the most easy one because it doesn't need much engineering effort. However, I do recommend doing the first three before doing this fourth one. And many customers leverage this to get discount in exchange for commitment to AWS. And so this is a rough picture of what your workload might look like from an EC2 perspective, and the vertical axis is spend. So this particular workload and customer is doing quite well in turning things on and off. So you can see over time, it jumps up and down. Now, this portion is called the elastic workload, and it's good for on-demand and Spot. This remaining base workload, if you're confident in the usage over the next certain amount of time, so for reserved instances, you commit for 1 year or 3 years, you get in exchange for that commitment a discount. So they provide up to 75% discount, but typically for a 1-year commitment, it's somewhere between 20 to 40% discount. So what are these things? Just to get into a little bit of detail about what they are, think of reserved instances like a discount coupon booklet. Anyone use coupon booklets before? So essentially, you have a booklet that gives you discounts because you're a frugal person and you want to get the savings where you can. And how they work is the booklet has a number of tickets in it equal to the number of hours of your commitment. So if you commit for 1 year, it's quite a thick booklet with the number of hours equal to the number of tickets. And each hour, you take a ticket and you try to match the ticket to what you're actually running. So if I'm running an M4 Linux in Singapore, shared tenancy, then you buy an RI that matches that, and if it matches, you get the discount. If it doesn't match, you don't get the discount. And so that's why it's a bit better to use for workloads that are a base workload, because every single hour you get a discount. But it's okay to stretch past the base workload a bit, because some RIs discount a lot, and it's more savings through RIs than you would be able to realize through turning things on and off. And keep in mind, RIs are a financial construct on top of your AWS infrastructure. So they're not actually physically buying or booking the resource itself, but it sits on top of it to give you discounts. So to some people, commitment might be a little bit scary. I'm not sure if I'm going to stay on the platform for the next 1 year, or I might be changing my resources around. And one thing that helps with that is convertible RIs. It's a type of RI that was released in late 2016, September 2016. And what they provide is a lot more flexibility to customers. So convertible RIs allow you to take advantage of newer instance types. So some customers say, hey, AWS is also always releasing new instance types. I don't want to commit to this. You should probably consider convertibles because that allows you to change. You can adapt your RIs as your business needs change. So if your business is changing from M4s into something else like T2s, then convertibles help there. It drastically reduces the likelihood of any unused RIs, especially in larger organizations where the person who buys and commits to the RIs might be separate to the engineering team that's running the resources. And you get to take advantage of price reductions as well. So if the price gets reduced, you can change your RI and then take advantage of that price. It does this by allowing you to change instance family, M4 to C5. You can change instance sizes from large into X large if you see that your workload needs it. You can change operating system from Linux to Windows or back. And you can change the tenancy from shared to dedicated. Now, on top of convertible RIs, customers are always asking us to make things easier. And this new feature, instance size flexibility, that was launched in 2017, makes it easier in terms of the need to match the size of RI to your running instance. And so in this example, I've got, say, one RI that's M4 4x large, and that RI has 4 units of size. With instance size flexibility, what happens is that RI can actually apply to 2 smaller instances or even 4 even smaller instances. Doesn't matter the size, how much smaller it gets, your RI will still apply. And it works the other way around. So if you've got things that are bigger, I've seen customers where during Christmas period they need to make their instances bigger, but outside of Christmas period they want their instances to be smaller. And so what they've done is buy the RI for the size that's outside of the Christmas period and only ramp it up during Christmas. And so in this example, it covers half of the bigger instance. And this works if your RI is regional, your RI and instance use is Linux, Unix, and some customers ask, hey, what's Linux, Unix, and does it include these other ones? Answer is yes, it includes Amazon Linux, CentOS, and Ubuntu, but it doesn't include SUSE or Red Hat. And the RI in an instance is shared tenancy. And also recently released was RDS size flexibility as well. So RDS can flex for certain database operating systems, namely the ones without license cost. All right, let's flick to our next demo. I want to show you what you can do in the AWS console around RIs. So this is back to Cost Explorer, a tool that I recommend everyone try to use. One thing in Cost Explorer that you can see is under reports, there is RI coverage. And RI coverage tells you what percentage of your on-demand use is benefiting from the RI discount. And for me, I've got about 12% coverage. For a lot of customers, they go anywhere between 30, 40, 50, 60, up to 80% coverage. And you say, okay, coverage is nice, but what should I actually get in terms of RIs? So under these 3 lines, on the side, there's RI recommendations. So I'm just going to look at EC2 for now. And for me, the system recommends that I get these 3 sets of RIs, and it's going to save me $838. For large enterprise organizations, this savings numbers can be very, very big, into the tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands. Now, when I'm happy to buy these RIs, I download the CSV with the RIs, and then I just go over to my console to purchase the RIs. After you buy the RIs, there are 2 things you want to do. One is check the report for RI utilization. RI utilization tells you how much you're saving, whether or not you're using the RIs that you just bought, and tells you specifically which RIs are unused, if any. If you made a mistake and got the wrong ones, then let your AWS account team know, and they can help you. So it's not great having to come here and check utilization all the time. We've all got better things to do in our day. And so what you want to do is set up some warnings. So if it does fall below a certain threshold, and I see many customers setting a threshold around 90%, so that you're getting the majority of the savings. To set up that warning, you go over to the billing console again. So you can access your billing console normally by the drop-down there, and then go to My Billing Dashboard. And inside, there's a section called Budgets. And in Budgets, you can set up cost budgets or RI utilization budgets. You can see my cost budget, just as an example, is $1,000 per month. And currently, it's forecasted to be $1,092 per month. So a little bit over what I was forecasting, but not much, so I'm happy with that. And for RI utilization, inside here, can't click into it. Oh, there we go. I'm going to go Create Budget and show you how that's created. So you can tick RI utilization budget, say monthly RI, util, make it monthly, make it specific to EC2, and say, hey, I care and want to be notified when it's below 90%. And you can type in all of the email contacts of the people who should care about this, so the engineers and perhaps the finance people. Or you can send it to a SNS topic for notification instead. All right, let's flick back to the slides. So that gave you an idea of how you might use the AWS provided native tools to manage your RIs. And after that, assuming you've done some of those steps, one final area to consider is designing for cost. And designing for cost has really countless methods. You can always learn a bit more and invest a bit more time to understand how all the different types of methods to save. But what I recommend is try out the first 4 first to understand and practice before you get into these deeper methods, which I've seen advanced customers use. And these are things like static web hosting on S3. So your website, instead of paying for the compute, worrying about the patching, worrying about the security, you can host it on S3, and there are no server costs to pay for anymore. And it's scalable in itself. You can do things like even running resources in a cheaper region. Not every single region is the exact same cost, and the bigger, more popular regions tend to have lower cost. And of course, we see a lot of customers going down the path of containerization, which helps as well. So outside of the technical levers that help you with optimization, quite often, many customers, they're quite busy with their day jobs, and we see customers sometimes forget to apply the levers. And so things that can help you remember to apply the levers are what I'll be sharing now. So it's all about getting the right people to care about spend and saving spend, and making it easier for those people. And so we've already shared a number of tools that helps with that, and wherever you can help people save time, that helps. But the first and most important thing to set up and start using is cost transparency. This thing is a little bit new to cloud, and many traditional infrastructure engineers are not used to looking at the cost of their infrastructure on a daily or weekly basis. And so when you use things like Cost Explorer, you can actually see exactly how much each workload costs and spends over time. You can also spot the differences. So if any workload spikes up unexpectedly, you can say, hey, let's investigate to see what's going on there. And setting some KPIs around elasticity. So I say, hey, half my cost should disappear on weekends. And if it doesn't disappear on weekends, I should investigate as well. That'll help as well. Of course, already mentioned, use all the cost tools and automation available to yourself. And you should allocate your spend wherever possible, especially in larger organizations. So when you allocate it through tagging and account structures, you can show people-specific spend and team-specific spend to the right person. And you should pick the visibility tool that you need. So starting on the far left is what many people are used to in traditional infrastructure world. You get a monthly invoice, and maybe you manage to that monthly invoice. But as you grow in size, complexity, the rate of change of your environment increases, there's a greater need to have more visibility during the month as well. And so I recommend you start with Cost Explorer and budgets that was demoed just earlier, and shift the dial depending on what you actually need. So to close out this section, spending less on AWS is really a lot like driving. If you learn how to use the pedals well, when to accelerate, when to brake, you look at where you're going using Cost Explorer and tagging, and apply some automation where relevant, then you're going to be well on your way to optimizing your spend. So I'm sure this is all new to very many of you, and you might need some help on your journey. And so the first point of contact is always your AWS account manager. So talk to your account manager, talk to the sales teams, talk to the marketing teams as well, who'll send you emails after the event. And for more advanced support, we've got services such as AWS Enterprise Support, which comes with a dedicated technical account manager. AWS Professional Services can help you not only with organizational transformation, but also this area of cost. And the AWS Partner Network, so third-party tools, and there are also some third-party consultants out there who help in this space. All right, so next steps to summarize all of that. First, get your teams using Cost Explorer. Super important. Just use it, have a look at it, keep it on your computer screen, maybe calendar reminder in the morning to have a look. Pick one technical lever that we've talked about today and try to optimize against that and track how you're doing over time. So for example, if you pick scheduling, check when you started how much was your weekday spend versus your weekend spend, and when you're done, you should see a good dip in your weekend spend if you've done it well. Come to future events that AWS runs. So there's an event on not 12 p.m. anymore, but on that day, Thursday, 18th of October at AWS, that marketing will reach out about, where you get to hear more about this space, deep dive into some tools, chat with other customers who are interested in this space as well. And of course, we always love your feedback. So after this talk, please take a moment to fill out the survey if you get a chance. Is there another slide? No. So feedback comes with prizes, so please fill it out. And appreciate your time today in joining me. Hope you learned a bit and got some value out of it, and hope you have a great rest of the summit. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Peter. And for a copy of Peter's deck, you can approach Jane and Celeste at the front and the back of the room to tap your smart badge to get a copy of the PDF deck. And if you were here 5 minutes before the session started, you would have seen the names of the winners flashed across the screen. So if you want to have a chance, have a go at winning that webcam cover or the limited edition swag, you can scan the QR code and follow the instructions to submit the survey. Thank you.